All right, welcome to day 2 of the We the People National Invitational. This is Unit 1. My name is Christine Hull, and I will be your facilitator today. We are here with Palmetto Academy from South Carolina. In a moment, the judges will introduce themselves, and then we will have the students introduce themselves. And then we will begin the hearing. Students will deliver a 4-minute prepared statement, followed by 8 minutes of judge questions. My microphone will be muted during the hearing, and I will hold up 1 minute and time signs. I suggest that you use gallery view, and all the students have been spotlighted, so they will appear on the top of the screen. At the conclusion of the hearing, judges will give brief feedback, and then we will conclude. Judges, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, folks. We will introduce ourselves, and as noted, we'd ask that you then introduce yourselves. I am still Alan Broadman, a recently retired high school teacher from New Jersey. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say today.
Tim Moore from the University of Wisconsin, the Center for the Study of the American Constitution.
Jan Grider-Jones with the University of Louisville's McConnell Center.
Hi, my name is Eliana Hart.
And I'm Gavin Zabadua.
My name is Sammy Lang.
My name is Aiden Hartwell, and we are from Palmetto Academy, and our teacher is Mr. DeSerpa.
Okay, excellent. So this time you know what the question is, but I will go ahead and read it anyway. So, if man in the state of nature be so free as has been said, if he be absolute Lord of his own person and possession, equal to the greatest and subject to nobody, why will he part with his freedom? Why will he subject himself to the dominion and control of any other power? How did John Locke answer these questions? According to John Locke and Thomas Jefferson, what is natural law in a state of nature? Do you agree or disagree with their reasoning? Why or why not? What did Locke mean by the social contract? Why did he think it necessary? What obligations does the social contract place on government and on the individual? You may begin.
John Locke, in his 2 treatises of government, compared the state of nature and consent of the governed, arguing why, in the state of nature, men would be willing to give up perfect freedom and subject himself to the dominion and control of another power. Locke argued that people are reasonable, good, and respect the rights of others because their conscience tells them that they have a duty to do so. But people are also driven by self-interest, which in accordance with Thomas Hobbes' theory, war of every man is against every man, and life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Locke believed that in a state of nature, people would protect their natural rights by using their own strength and skill. Weaker people would try to protect their own rights by joining together against the strong. Locke and Hobbes argued that in a state of nature, one's life, liberty, and property would be safe. In the state of nature, there are no government or laws to protect one's natural rights. And Locke believed that in a state of nature, no one would have the right to govern you, and you would not have the right to govern anyone else. Locke resolved the questions by social contract theory.
Thomas Jefferson and John Locke differed slightly on their interpretations of natural law in the state of nature. They agreed that natural law is a law of self-conscience and the rights are held to obtain whether or not the holders recognize them. And they have a moral dimension from their obvious legal dimension. As St. Thomas Aquinas described, natural law was thought to embody principles of right and wrong, especially pertaining to relations between and among individuals that could be ascertained by by human reason, apart from divine revelation. Both of their sound reasoning is flawed, as John Locke noted that the human mind was a tabula rasa and was shaped only by experience, and their natural law was based on their conscience. When looking at Thomas Jefferson, he believed that natural law was stoical or enduring pain and hardship, and that natural law in the state of nature are roughly the same laws that are obtained in a civil society, and that men working together in a homogeneous nature would work itself out. But to aspire, the government would need to step in and protect these rights in a heterogeneous society so that true equity and the pursuit of happiness could be achieved.
In the United States today, being free leaves room for social unrest. And when looking over the lasting hardship and oppression in our country, the idea that everyone is born equal and free is more of a utopian idea. As Cicero argues much more reasonably, civil law must shape itself into accordance with the natural law of divine reason. And as it is portrayed today, the unequal treatment under the law of minority groups. This was seen before our Constitution when the enslavement of humans happened, and the case system shows natural lack of law in society. Like George Floyd, the LGBTQ movement, and disenfranchisement of voting rights, the law of nature based on John Locke and Jefferson is not correct.
Social contract based on John Locke is a way to protect each person's natural rights so that everyone could enjoy life, liberty, and property and live in peace with one another. The best way Locke argued was for each individual to agree with others and create and live under a government and give the government the power to enforce laws. In a social contract, obligations are placed on each person as well as the government. Everyone promises to give up the absolute right to do anything he or she wants to do. In exchange, everyone receives the security that can be provided by a government. The reasoning behind this is so that the government can protect those natural rights that the individual cannot effectively protect in the state of nature. In the end, if the government breaks their social contract, it is the right of the people to overthrow their government.
Okay. So I'd like to follow up, particularly in the area you talked about in terms of rights and rights protection, and the government's purpose ostensibly is to protect my rights, your rights overall. Now, I'd like you to focus, however, under what circumstances government should be able to limit my rights.
I think a good example of where the government should limit your rights would be, for example, when it comes to taxation. For example, we don't necessarily have to pay taxes, however, the government enforces us to do so, and it benefits us as a whole with the common good, as what Thomas Jefferson believed, so that the government can help other people with said taxes.
Another way that our rights could be limited is in the form of speech that directly incites violence. In the case Brandenburg v. Ohio, any speech that incites imminent lawless action was said to be limited. And a place where there's a lot of debate about how we should limit these is on social media. Because as of now, social media companies are able to limit speech on their sites just however they want it to. But the UN has actually talked a lot about forcing social media companies to align their speech codes with international human rights law, specifically Article 19 of the ICCPR. And companies such as Twitter or Facebook have expressed agreement, interestingly.
I disagree with my partners. I don't believe that it's the government's job to necessarily limit our rights. In the past, the government has tried to limit our rights of speech, like with the Alien and Sedition Acts. And as John Locke said, the purpose of government is to protect, and I don't think that the limitation of our rights is under protecting. The only case where I can see that possible is when someone's actions or speech directly harms another individual.
I agree with my partner Gavin to an extent. I believe that our rights should be limited in a way that we cannot, for instance, scream fire in a crowded building where it can cause harm to other people. Another example of this would be January 6th of storming the Capitol. I think we should be able to have the right to revolution as included in the social contract, but we should not be able to have the right to violently hurt any other people or inflict or incite other revolutions.
The reason I disagree with you two on this is because based on Hobbes's natural state of nature theory, life would be nasty, brutish, and short if there wasn't any government to limit it. So I believe that there should be a social contract and a limiting of rights, which makes it so that people have to give up some of their rights so the government will protect the rest of their rights. That's why I believe that the government should limit their rights, because as you said, Eliana, if people are able to, if people can say, for example, speech that directly incites imminent lawless action, then there would be a lot more violence in our country.
A solution to this problem.
Okay,
Let's
let the other judges.
let's go into Sammy's deepest fear, the state of nature. Do you think there's any state of natures out there right now?
Yes, I do believe there are plenty of examples of state of nature today. For example, with indigenous people that are still around today, like for example, I believe there are people still in South Africa who do not have a more developed society as we do, and those are perfect examples of state of nature that can be found today.
I disagree with my partner, Gavin. I think that we all are still under this social contract theory as we have evolved from more of a state of nature as our population has expanded, just as Rousseau's idea that we went from a natural society into a more civil society where we had so many people. For instance, now we could walk outside and we have neighbors that we come in contact with every day.
I believe.
What if I decided to go in the middle of I don't know, Idaho, in a little cabin, just my dog, no electricity, no running water? Am I in a state of nature? Have I left the contract?
I do not believe that you would have left the contract, because if you're in the state of Idaho, you're still technically bound by social contract law as long as you're still a citizen. And the Hobbes and Locke state of nature was more based on how the people around you would act rather than just how you would live. Like Hobbes' state of nature was that life would be nasty and brutish and short because people are evil at their cores. But Locke believed that the strong would rise over the weak. The weak would have to band together to regain control. So, yeah.
I disagree with my partner, Sammy. I believe that under the idea of a Enlightenment philosopher from Ethiopia, Zara Jacob, that we are all, you can still be in the state of nature as long as you are still equal with everybody else under religious terms. So let's say you were to move out into the mountains with your dog. You are still following you are still under a sort of natural law, just not the same one that as we would be in today, as we would live in more communities with other people that we come in contact with.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask a different question here to pivot us. What should people have the right to do if their government does not serve the purpose for which it was created? What should people have the right to do?
I believe that if the government is not serving the people like the US government is supposed to, as an example, I think that by what John Locke and other Enlightenment figures said, a right to a revolution would be entirely in their favor. As, for example, if the government were to do anything that was said to be tyrannical in that term, not only do you have the right to revolution, but also the right to petition the government for change, as is in our Constitution, in our First Amendment, for example. And that there have been modern examples of this, like the Whiskey Rebellion and Shays Rebellion.
A solution to this would be Hobbes's theory that the leader, the government, the monarchy would have all total absolute power. And if the government messes up, which technically the government shouldn't mess up by Hobbes's theory, then the people have no right to revolt or anything because the monarchy has absolute power.
While I stated earlier that January 6th might have been inciting more violence than more right to revolution, I still believe that.
You can finish your sentence. Go ahead, hon.
Okay, I still believe that that was an example of right to revolution. If they felt that their rights weren't being protected in a certain way, they were able to go out and express the way they felt to our government.
Thank you.
So we're gonna, this is our time to give you some feedback. So I'll leave this to one of my two peers to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I think your opening statement was quite strong. I especially appreciated your understanding that Hobbes' state of nature was a lot uglier than Locke, even though they're both contractualists. So I appreciated that. I also thought the your understanding of Jefferson's, there's a dilemma in Jefferson's that the rights pre-contract pretty much look the same way as the rights look post-contract. And, you know, what's up with that? Why aren't they different? So, and that, if we had more time, I would have come back to that, because I'd like to really push you on that to see your thinking on that pre-rights, pre-contract rights versus post-contract rights. I think this was really good. I think your answers are very sophisticated and very well developed. But I would, having said that, as a compliment, it also cuts both ways. It at some point you've answered the question, and so leave it alone. I know you've studied so much, and you want to make sure we hear it all. But you know, you're going to have to maybe step back. And I also thought I would like to hear a little bit more on my isolated question out there in the middle of nowhere. But you know, you caveat that by saying just because you're isolated, the contract is in context to other people. That's the reason for a contract. So I thought that was a nice rebuttal to my insistence that I am isolated, therefore out of the contract. So this is a very sophisticated understanding of some of these very difficult concepts. So thank you. It's been wonderful to meet you and talk with you a couple times this weekend.
I agree. I think the nuance that you all recognize both in your statements and then in your responses, very clear that you're wrestling with these bigger ideas. I would have liked had more time allowed to kind of explore this idea of revolution. You're giving examples of First Amendment right to protest. Revolution for some may evoke the idea of violence. So would have liked to have gotten a little bit more and hear your thoughts on what does that look like. So bottom line is, I think just really enjoyed the conversation that we were having here and exploring the ideas. Also really enjoyed hearing multiple references to additional philosophers not asked in the question, Cicero, Aquinas. So clear you all have put a lot of research and work into this. So want to thank you for the effort here this weekend and all the effort you and your teachers have done to lead up to this point. So thank you.
Yeah, I have to, not that I'm forced to agree, I completely agree with my peers. I also want to point out that I really enjoyed the back and forth. And I clearly, and I'm not picking this person out, but Aiden clearly is not as aggressive as some of you. And I think there were times when I would have loved to have heard even more from him. This is not a complaint. This is a recognition that you guys were really on top of your responses, okay? And it can be hard, even with a 4-person group. Look, I've had 6-person groups, okay? And the difficulty is always getting in, but I think Aiden had some really wonderful things to say in the context of when he spoke. You guys clearly beat up on my first question. And probably more than I think any group I have had all day. But I also enjoyed that you went into non-Unit 1 stuff. I got Brandenburg, and I got Brandenburg correctly, which is a good thing. So I very much enjoyed that. I didn't catch the name of the philosopher from Ethiopia, but
well, you're not up on your philosophers from Ethiopia, Alan.
No, I'll readily admit that. But
really,
but Eliana, you were going to say his name, I guess. So
His name was Zara Jacob.
Jacob. Okay, thank you.
Of course.
And again, I thoroughly enjoyed the back and forth that we had. This is one of those that you wish went a whole lot longer. So again, thank you so much for all the work that you've done. Thank your teacher for the work that and teachers or whatever that they may have done or helped you with. But again, thank you so much, folks.
Good luck.
Thank
Thank you.
you.